Hi Digital Chiefs. So you've been lucky enough to secure a spot on an amazing accelerator program. How do you make the most of it? Hi Digital Chiefs. So you've been lucky enough to secure a spot on an amazing accelerator program. How do you make the most of it? For some of you, this might be the first time you've received investment, gone full time in the business, or actually just made a serious commitment to building out your vision. Having been part of a number of global accelerator programs, I've seen some founders really come in from day one and maximize the time they spend. And then I've seen some companies really languish through the 3, 6, or 12 months of the program, never quite working out how to take advantage of the new resources. Most founders are somewhere in between, where they've taken a little bit of time to figure out how exactly to take advantage of the new opportunities at their disposal. Here are some tips to put you on the fast track so you get the most out of your time in an accelerator program. Before we get started, I'm going to assume that you've already checked out my previous video on what you should look for in an accelerator program and worked out exactly what it is that you're hoping to achieve when you graduate. If you haven't done so, make sure you check that out. The links will be provided at the end of this video. Number 1, show up on time. Yes, it's so obvious that it's silly, but you would be surprised at how many founders I've seen who've signed away some of their business equity, paid an upfront fee, and yet will not come to every single class prepared and ready to soak up everything. I guess that would be like paying for university, but then skipping your classes. However, I find skipping accelerator sessions less acceptable than skipping university, given university itself is more than just the classes. It is about the whole experience of being on campus. It is also over many years. An accelerator is more voluntary. It is over an intensive 3 to 12 month period. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you should have spent a good amount of time vetting the actual program itself. I kid you not, I've seen participants go on 3-day camping trips in the middle of a 12-week accelerator program and skip out on meeting a senior partner on one of the largest VC funds in the country. While I'm a big believer in balance in life, an accelerator is not the time for it. This was a clear sign that these founders were not serious. I would forgive this particular group if they had plenty of introductions to investors, if they already knew how to pitch them. However, a few months later, these same exact founders approached me for advice and introductions to investors. And unfortunately, I just had to prioritize other founders and other startups ahead of them. There are simply too many good founders competing for the same advice and the same investor introductions. Number 2, be prepared. This one should also be obvious, but frankly, I see so many founders fail at this that it's worth mentioning given how simple it is. This just involves reading the materials ahead of time, looking up the LinkedIn bios of your mentors and facilitators. If you're really bold, you can just add them to your LinkedIn and say hello. This touches on another point that I'm going to cover later on around standing out in the accelerator program. If your program is really organized, you should be getting materials about a week to 48 hours ahead of sessions, giving you time to go over them. I know this is how I manage accelerator programs, barring any last-minute emergencies from the external mentors or facilitators. Good mentors would tend to be booked out very, very early. So if you are consistently getting materials from your program team at the last minute, it might be something that you need to bring up with them. Number 3, take notes. This is yet another self-explanatory one, but again, I've seen founders show up to sessions without a notebook and pen in their hand. The reason I'm mentioning this is that a lot of people aren't aware about the feedback loop that exists when you are taking notes. What a lot of people don't realize is the simple act of your brain instructing your hand to write notes and then you rereading them again on your page actually helps with memory and retention, which means you are more likely to act on the advice. After all, you can't act on something you don't remember. Number 4, be a giver. This includes to your entire network, your fellow cohort members, your program managers, your mentors, and your facilitators. Again, if you've seen my previous video on what you should look for in an accelerator program, you'll know that one of the key reasons to join is the actual community itself. But the community is only as good as those in it. While you are there to gain value, you are also there to give value. If your accelerator managers are good at what they do, they should already be creating an environment that facilitates sharing among the cohort. If they haven't, there's no reason why you can't lead the way. So be vulnerable, share your failures and successes, celebrate your fellow cohort successes. Number 5, be present, i.e., be responsive and be visible. In a room full of 6 to 12 startups, it is incredibly hard for a mentor to remember all of you. And I think it's fair to say that culturally in APAC, we are taught to be the opposite, i.e. to not stand out and to not appear to be bothering anyone. While this is grounded in being humble, a good trait, as entrepreneurs, you are there to represent your team and your product. The fact is, if you believe your product helps people, then you should ideally want more people to know about it so that you can serve more of them. You simply cannot do that if you are not standing out and not being remembered. What are some ways you can do this without being quote unquote annoying? Well, here's a few things you could try. For example, being the first to unmute or put up your hand to ask a question at the end of the session. When you receive the program information, start prepping for questions as you review the content. As a presenter is speaking, because you're taking notes, you should be writing interesting points down and questions as they come to you. I'm personally a curious person, so it comes naturally to me. However, for you, it might take a little bit of practice. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room full of founders when it came to question time, people were simply too shy and not ready to jump in with their questions. I think just practice being genuinely excited to be in a room with someone who is smarter than you on a particular topic, and the questions will come naturally. Another way you can stand out is to set yourself a goal to get in touch with every single speaker before the session. You can do this by emailing them or finding them on LinkedIn and sending them a quick message such as looking forward to your session or thank you for taking the time out. Again, this sounds very simple, but very few founders do this. This brings up another key point. If you've done your job in the beginning and properly vetted the program before applying and accepting, you should be trusting the program managers to bring in the right people. You might not connect with every single person the program puts you in front of. After all, few of us do that every day when we meet new people. You might also not be ready for the lessons they will share, or it's simply just less applicable to your startup. However, it's still important to reserve your judgment, keep an open mind, be gracious, and allow people to surprise you. Trust that your program managers have brought this person in for a reason. It might not be obvious. It may be who this person knows and the kind of influence they have. When I ran programming, I noticed this strange phenomenon where feedback on female speakers, and in particular minority female speakers, were always ranked lower on feedback surveys. This is, of course, anecdotal. We also needed to improve the diversity of the participants themselves. However, I can't emphasize this point more. keep your judgments at the door. Number 6, leverage media. More and more these days, media outlets no longer cover brand new cohort announcements. This is simply because there are just so many accelerators out there. However, that doesn't mean you can't generate some of your own buzz. Now, again, I know that most of us in APAC tend to shy away from the media and talking about ourselves. However, think of the media as a way to put yourself in front of opportunities. After all, people, organizations, and investors can't reach out to you if they don't know about you. The accelerator typically will still do a release of some sort. So while you don't have to plan a full media campaign, make sure you know when the release will land so that you can be ready to amplify it on social media at the very least. This again goes back to my point about being memorable. Marketing research has shown that it can take about 7 touch points for a customer to trust a brand enough to buy. Buy might mean a range of things. So it could simply be picking up the phone to get in touch with you or actually purchasing directly online. It would be like creating a friendly room for your customer to step into so that they are feeling a lot more comfortable to buy from you. It would also be a lot easier for you to be able to step in a room where it feels like the audience already knows a little bit about you. So in addition to asking when the media announcements will go out and what it will contain, you might also want to ask what other media channels you might have access to, whether that be locally or globally. Some accelerators might have newsletters that they create, social media that you could access and leverage, as well as events you could speak at. So you could offer to write an article, conduct an interview, or perhaps even teach a workshop. Few founders ask, and if you don't ask, then you don't get. Accelerators themselves are always looking to recruit a new class, expand their network. So by sharing your news and your stories, it actually helps them as well. So make sure you're leveraging each other. Number 7, involve your team. Hopefully before you've applied or accepted the entry into the program, you've already spoken to your team members and gotten their buy-in. An accelerator is a big commitment of time and resources, and so you will need everyone's support. Say yes to as much as possible that you and your team can manage from the program's offerings. The goal of all accelerator programs is to multiply your time. So it is meant to be intensive, i.e. a 3-month program is meant to accelerate you by a year. A startup, particularly those receiving venture capital, is not meant to be a lifestyle business. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to run a lifestyle business, but it's simply not a startup. Good accelerators are filtering these kind of companies out. However, you can divide and distribute the load somewhat. Bring in your team for sessions that are helpful to them. Some programs allow this while others don't. So please make sure you check first. Prep your team and communicate how they will or won't be part of the accelerator. Allocate the time and the budget, including your own. I've seen teams come in thinking that they will simply continue what they were doing before, piling the accelerator on top of the existing workload instead of working out amongst the team who is doing what, who's taking the lead, and who's actually attending which sessions. This created a lot of confusion, sometimes a bit of friction and repetition, and really just didn't take advantage of the program. Make sure that your team is not one that is doing that. Number 8, keep in touch. In addition to sending thank you notes, if you do meet a mentor that you really connect with and want to keep in touch with, then make sure you get their contact details and follow up. This is a pro tip. While your accelerator managers will have the contact details of everyone they bring through the program, it is always best for you to personally ask for their information if you are sitting down with them or speaking with them one-to-one. This is because it's important for you to be asking permission to get in touch. The act of them handing their business card to you or providing their contact information is a way for them to actively acknowledge and say yes to keeping in touch. The teams that did all of the above things were the easiest to work with. As a result, they were always the first to receive introductions, speaking opportunities, and media access. I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but the more you put into an accelerator, the more you will get out. Even if you do 80% of what I've listed, you will get more out of the program than most. I still get the odd email from the founder of the Accelerator program that I personally participated in. This particular program has 20 plus global chapters and has run 10 years of programming. And let's just say it is an incredible compliment to still be getting access to their particular network. Now, did I miss anything? What about you? Have you participated in an accelerator program? What were some of the highlights? What were some of the things that you did to get the most out of the program? I'd love to hear from program managers as well. What are some of the most frustrating things that founders have done in your own programs? I know it's certainly not easy to be working with entrepreneurs all the time. I'd love to hear some of your stories. Leave me a comment below. I hope you're all feeling a little bit more accelerated after this video.